Welcome to Business as Unusual. It's the weekly webinar where we discuss how marketers, salespeople, and scale-up business owners can stay productive, profitable, and at peace in the pandemic and whatever comes after. Today, we're looking at websites and CMSs and how the future of tech may impact what we deploy so that we can get better return on our investment. And in this episode, we're joined by the wonderful Luke Summerfield. Luke is the go-to market lead for the HubSpot CMS at HubSpot. It's crazy early for him because he's on the West Coast. Morning, Luke.
Morning. No, it's not too early for me. I'm an early riser, and I love being joined by so many smart people from all over the world. It gives me energy. So I am awake and ready to rock, ready to chat.
Cool. And for those of you who are watching the recording, you didn't see that Luke gave me the tip of sharing my computer sound so that as people joined for this webinar, they were given a bit of an energize by Charles Mingus. Great tip. Thank you, Luke. I think that's probably going to be the first of many. So, Luke, most of us on this call are British, and therefore it is in our DNA to ask this question. And I have to ask it on behalf of all of us because it's raining over here. What's the weather like in San Diego?
I guess they call it sunny San Diego for a reason. It's usually 27 Celsius and sunny every day. So 20. I mean, I think it's like in Fahrenheit, it's what 70 to 80 to 85 degrees every day. So yeah, very fortunate to be out here in the good weather. Of course, you pay for it. We pay for it in taxes, but and cost of living. But you know, obviously, there's no price in just being able to enjoy the outdoors.
Now it's just dawned on me. Was the last inbound was in it was in Boston. I went to, what conference did I go to in San Diego? Can't remember. But everybody, I remember seeing you in Boston and in Dublin a couple of times, and seeing you walk around in a loud jacket, probably with palm trees, a palm tree print, shorts and flip flops, and thinking, well, who's that guy? And then no one's riding a skateboard to work around here. We're in freaking Dublin. And then I understand you're from San Diego, and having been there, I'm like that. Oh, well, that all makes sense. That's exactly.
Try to bring some of the weather, some of the good vibes with me wherever I go. But yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin, which is right north of Chicago, just over the border in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it snows a lot there, and it gets really, really, really cold. And so now when I go to places like Dublin or Boston, it's pretty mild. It's not, for me, it's like shorts and flip-flops all the time. It's, you know, the summer weather of Wisconsin is kind of like the winter in Dublin is kind of what it is. So
yeah. Well, we're delighted to have you on this call. And agnostic of what it is you do day to day, perhaps. What the hell is a go-to market lead? What does that mean?
It's a really fuzzy title, intentionally, but basically, so I work on the product team and in product leadership, and basically what we do is at HubSpot we talk about the flywheel, and the flywheel is like all the pieces of the experience that a customer goes through, and as you remove friction from that flywheel, it can go faster and faster and faster. And so what my job is to, first understand the people that are using our product. In this case, it's the CMS. Understand the market outside of HubSpot and try to find and identify those highest friction points within the flywheel. And then go and work with the teams and the different departments on trying to remove that. And so sometimes that's inspiring that team to take that problem on to solve it. Sometimes it's me doing a lot of facilitation and getting my hands dirty. Sometimes it's just me, and that's like what I need to do to get the work done. So it's intentionally very, very fuzzy. I see it almost like a little entrepreneur inside of HubSpot because, you know, again, the two metrics that I own are customer NPS. So basically, how happy are people and are they being successful in finding value? So customer NPS and revenue. And basically anything that falls under those two, which is pretty much anything, is something I need to work on if there's a problem. So it's very, very much like that. And it's it's a fun role because it puts me in a lot of very, very different types of projects and work with a lot of different types of people from all over the company and wonderful partners. And so I really, really enjoy it.
Okay. And what was your journey to that point? What's your potted history with sort of web stuff and HubSpot? How long have you been around?
It's funny because the role being really, really fuzzy is actually not anything new to me. So it was such a good fit. Before I've been at HubSpot for about 5 years. I'll keep this short. I'm sure a lot of people are checking their email and all that stuff while I'm talking. But I started at HubSpot 5 years ago. But before that, I actually worked at a partner agency and ran a partner agency. We were a small web shop, and I did that for about 3.5 years. So within the HubSpot bubble, probably 8.5, 9 years now.
Wow.
And within the web design world, probably 13 years.
Right.
And that agency grew and ended up getting acquired. And I jumped to my next adventure at HubSpot, and I got hired without a title, without a role. They had known me because I had worked with them on a number of projects. I worked with them at the agency side to launch our previous version of our CMS, which we called the COS, the Content Optimization System.
Yeah.
And work with the product team to try to launch that. But yeah, got hired without a role. And at the time, our CEO's big pet rock, Halligan, his pet rock was get more people doing cool stuff on the CMS. And so that was my initiative. That's all the guidance I got. Go figure it out. And so,
did you have got that job if you weren't wearing the cool jacket and the flip flops? You'd been in a tie, and they'd have been like, "Not you, mate. Nah."
It's funny because the first 3 months I worked at HubSpot, it was a tie every single day, button up, tie, everything. And so, because you get this big job. I had to move cross country to go to live there, and you think you need to dress to impress, and in some level I think that's true, but it really wasn't me. So and it really isn't how HubSpot is either. So it was very, very, very quickly, about 3 months in, I started just dressing a little bit more what's my style, and felt a lot more comfortable, and funny enough, performed a lot better too. But so yeah, and then from there just did a little tour of duty, working on all kinds of interesting projects to help the CMS grow. From working in the partner program for a few years, working on HubSpot's marketing team, on their academy, launching some certifications. And then about 3 years ago, I jumped to the product team, first 2 years focusing on developers and the folks that are coding all the cool stuff on HubSpot, and trying to build a world-class development experience for folks that are coding. And a lot of the projects that I put together there, I'm not a developer, so there's only so far I could take them. They hired a bunch of people, they took over the projects, and they're doing phenomenal things with those further than I ever could, which freed my time up the last year to work on launching this new CMS hub that we launched on April 7th.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. That's really useful to know, because I know you think it's boring, but actually it's good, because it's so often when we're talking to, not people from HubSpot necessarily, that would be a horrible accusation, but when you're talking to people and you see these things go on, often you think, geez, that guy's like 2 pages further ahead on the manual than me. I can hear him. Whereas you live it, breathe it, and have been working on it for a while. One of the questions I love to ask HubSpotters when I meet them for the first time is, so how many people were there at HubSpot when you joined?
When I joined as a partner agency, there was 200.
And how many are there?
You know what? I couldn't even answer that question. That's probably fault on me. But between all of our offices globally, we probably have 3,500, somewhere in there. Again, it's tricky to tell, because certain offices are growing, and obviously with the global pandemic, things have changed. Not in terms of HubSpot's been phenomenal. They haven't done any layoffs. Like, everyone's been very confident and good, but obviously hiring slows down a little bit, just in terms of like marketers and sales. R&D is still ramping up and everything like that, which is phenomenal. But yeah, I couldn't tell you 3,000, 3,500, somewhere in that line.
That's the number I keep hearing. And also I mean, at least now I can ask you that question, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it didn't go up by about 40 people while you were answering the question. Because before that, it felt like it was just growing like crazy. Okay, that is brilliant. So, I have a thing, I'm letting lightning in a pond magic here for the people that are on, and they probably just think that I'm incredibly well read when I ask these questions. But one of the things I do is ask everybody, what's a crazy but true fact about you? I picked that up off of some How to Do a Podcast blog. Most people I ask, and it's like, oh, okay, that sounds like it's true, but it doesn't sound that crazy. Luke, you were once knocked out in front of 4,000 people on national television in Moscow, in Russia. What the hell, man? And then we'll get to what we should be talking about. I need to know how that happened and why.
I mean, outside of work, one of my big hobbies is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, MMA. I've been doing that for now like 13 and a half, 14 years. And a long time ago in another life, I had the opportunity to represent the US in a US versus Russia. It wasn't MMA. It was like Russia has a sport called hand-to-hand combat or combat sambo. It's like their national military sport. Very similar to MMA, but it has a little different rules. And had the opportunity to represent HubSpot, or not HubSpot. That'd be cool if it was HubSpot. HubSpot actually has, so I'll say this, HubSpot actually has a jujitsu class that they organize in the gyms, and they bring in an instructor. This is in Dublin. The US one, we tried to kind of like look into it. We never got it going, but I thought it was so cool. They have a black belt that comes in and teaches classes in the Dublin one. And we have like a little team, and they got like the uniforms, the rash guards printed. And,
that's cool.
But anyway, this was not with HubSpot, but it was, went over there, and it's hilarious. It's all put on by the mafia because they all do the betting and everything. So we got just treated world-class, like mafia took us around in limousines, and got to go to RT, which is their like national television, like kind of probably like the BBC of Russia, and do press conferences. And got knocked out in like 3.5 minutes in front of 4,000 people on RT, and then partied after and had an awesome time. And everyone was so gracious. They treated us like true athletes, and they really are very, very respectful. We went and trained at their gyms and kind of taught them some techniques. They taught us some techniques afterwards, which was really, really cool. And then because it was their national military sport, we were technically diplomats. And so we got to go tour the president's palace, and we got to meet a bunch of people and take photos, and then tour their national gem archives. So you're looking at these giant diamonds that were gifted to them in the 1300s and 1200s. And it was really cool. It was wild.
Cool. Good. Well, thank you. I'm glad you recovered. I've now got in my mind the image that HubSpot might send a team to take on Russia. And Joseph,
I don't know. Maybe someday, maybe.
Joseph in the chat.
I got the jiu-jitsu team going.
Yeah, exactly. But Joseph in the chat has said that you clearly get an orange belt when you pass the
HubSpot. Yeah, the HubSpot class.
Right. So quickly going to share my screen. And today we're going to be talking about, because this is where we find ourselves in as business is unusual, and this is going to mutate over the next few months, but still right now we're seeing a lot of people who have a lack of money, or at least budgets have been reallocated, or there's a very bare market even inside individual businesses where suddenly everybody's doing that and clawing back budgets. So lots of discretionary budgets have been moved. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there is opportunity to be had. And thanks, Alan, actually, who's here today. He's been firing stuff into the chat. We talked about money and uncertainty on the first one of these, and he said, man, we should also talk about opportunity. And there is opportunity. We're seeing it. I'm sure you're seeing it, Luke. So we'll come on to all of those things, I think, in our discussion. Today's talk is being hosted by, not hosted by, I'm hosting it. I'll tell you about me very briefly in a sec, but by HubSpot. Is there a 1-minute elevator pitch you can say for HubSpot, Luke?
Yeah, we're an all-in-one platform for basically running the front end of your business. So this is sales software, marketing software, website software, customer service software. It's really a all-in-one platform to build world-class customer experiences. And the idea is that with the power that you get at HubSpot, you can do it better than your competitors. So that's my little pitch again. Like as someone, my focus is a lot in the web world, but all of these pieces work hand in hand. I think it's really, sometimes we think of like marketing's over here and sales is over here and the website's over here, but the reality is your customer experiences all of those elements in their journey, and so it's just about creating a wonderful journey for your customers.
Brilliant, thank you, mate. It's hosted by us, Noisy Little Monkey. Us. That's weird. I'm not the entity. It's its own legal entity. Noisy Little Monkey is a Diamond partner, and we do inbound marketing automation and sales enablement. Primarily, we look at strategy and then helping people execute. There's some people we've done it for. I'm not going to, if you're watching this, you're already on our freaking website. So, or you've heard of us because you've come to this webinar. So I'm not going to explain it too much. We talked about the flywheel. This is our version of the flywheel. And everybody's been getting bored at Noisy Little Monkey for decades because I've been going on about the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, where I first came across the concept of a business flywheel. Guys, I'm not going to explain this because actually Luke did it really well without any aid memoir. But one of the things I'm going to mention is that we, over here in the delight phase where we're looking at support tickets and all of that kind of stuff, exactly what you just said, Luke. One of our biggest successes with a client was that they had loads of, their ecosystem was everywhere. They had a huge tool stack. And one of the things we did was put the tool stack all into HubSpot. It took us a while because we had to unpick some of their business processes and align them a bit better with HubSpot rather than with Zendesk and 2 or 3 other systems that they were running. We eventually got that done. And then we found that their biggest revenue source, while we sorted out the rest of their business, was from support tickets. So support tickets became it comes to a support person, and immediately they realized that this is actually a subscription issue. We hand it over to sales, and sales helps those people upgrade their account. It was an online advertising platform. And
that's quite smart. We talk about that at HubSpot too. We have a service qualified lead. And a service qualified lead is any time that one of our service reps has a conversation with someone and sees them struggling with something, that the reason they're struggling with it is they just don't know. They haven't discovered that there's this other thing that they could be buying or doing or that would help them with that. And so, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because I haven't heard a lot of people talking about service qualified leads outside of like our little internal HubSpot company. So it's brilliant that you worked with them on it.
I wish we'd come up with the term service qualified lead. Because it's just, that thing of selling to existing customers is so much easier. I'm a salesman, so I love selling to existing customers because they've fallen over themselves to give me money. And sometimes it used to feel like service is a blocker, and we're finding more and more that it isn't a blocker. So that's absolutely fantastic. Obviously what we're going to talk about a lot today is in the attract and engage stage of that flywheel. Before we get on to money, what I always like to think about when we're talking about CMSs, and probably we're going to bleed a little bit into automation, is bring up this, I guess it's 2 or 3 years old now, this stat by Marketing Sherpa, that 73% of B2B leads are not ready to be passed to the sales department. So often people will download something or sign up to your newsletter on your website, and your sales team, people who look like me in your business, the old white guys who used to make hundreds of phone calls and do appointments, are desperate to get over to that person and start screaming in their face about how they should buy your products. And actually, one of the things we love about HubSpot is we're able to both put in the relevant friction in the relevant places so that the sales team don't get all over these people and scare them off. And we apply everything HubSpot helps us apply context to that buyer's journey, particularly around CMS. But the other thing we like is those back-end tools that we're able then to, not back-end, still front-end, but those tools we're able to give the sales team so that they can suddenly start to see, oh, wow, with more context, I can slow this down and I can get a bigger order and the lifetime value goes up. So that's why we love it. Right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I want to see your beautiful face. Let's talk about money. So we've got lack of money because there's a pandemic, but also everybody's always a bit short of money. They've never got exactly what they need. How can using CMS better, or what can we do to save money with either the HubSpot CMS or the CMSs we're using now and in the future?
The first thing that is important for all of us to understand, which comes out of the design world, of course, but is that when I think of the website, I think of it as the front experience that your customers have with your business. It's like your virtual business. And in this day and age, it's, for a lot of people, it's like one of the primary, if not only, ways that they experience your business. And so if you look at it through that lens, I think there's kind of a traditional mindset that the website is this kind of business expense. You kind of just have to do it. It's like a necessary evil. It's a static brochure. You take this PDF you had and digitize it, and that's like what you put on your website. And the reality is that the way we need to think about it, and this is the way that modern companies think about it, like Facebook, Google, Slack, Uber, Airbnb, HubSpot. It's instead, we think about it as this is the experience that someone has with interacting with our company. It's a growth investment for us to invest in this website. And so instead of saying, well, it's a business expense, the money's just kind of going out the tube, it's how might we invest in the website in a way that as we put effort into it, as we put money into it, it's going to disproportionately pay out, just like any other investment, on the business, the leads, the reducing friction, reducing support tickets, increasing hiring pipeline, onboarding new customers, finding ways that you can integrate the website into, again, that flywheel that we talked about. The website's really the public facing part of that flywheel that the customers interact with. And so again, I think it's important to just mindset shift from this is a static brochure that's out there and like we can direct people to it, to thinking about it almost like a virtual show, like a virtual retail store, a virtual experience that someone has. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of companies, it's interesting with the pandemic, we've actually seen website usage and content creation go up quite a bit. For, I think, that exact reason. Folks are now seeing that this is their place that they can engage customers, engage prospects in a way that they can't in the physical world. We're also seeing a lot of folks that are transitioning things that traditionally were done in person, like trade shows, like events, like new client onboarding, where they go to the office and onboard them, are starting to build those experiences on the website. And so I think those are some interesting considerations. And the third thing I'll mention there is, along with that, is once you shifted to thinking about the website as an experience that your customers interact with, just like your products and services, the other mindset shift that is important, and what we see with modern companies, is that they think of their website like a product in their product line. So just like you have products and services that you offer as a business, and you have product managers and engineers or tech leads working on those, improving them, they're always making them better, they're releasing new versions of that product to deliver more value. If you shift your mindset to think of, instead of the static brochure, this is actually one of our products in our product line, and we're going to continuously improve it. We're going to invest in it just like we do in our other products. And maybe it's a free product. Maybe it delivers value in a free way. Or maybe you start introducing paid elements where the website now becomes a paid product, like online academies, like payment processing systems to make purchases online. We see a lot of companies now that are trying to find ways to generate new revenue streams or new channels for revenue if in-person is no longer available. So I think all of those, the first step is just shifting the mindset at the company and how we think about the website as a tool to help grow the business, that it's a growth investment, that's a product in our product line, that it's the experience that customers are having. Since, again, in this day and age, it's not possible to do in-person experiences as easily as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think, or have you heard of any good approaches of being able to pitch that as, I'm the marketer, maybe I'm a marketing manager like many of the people on the call today. How do they go about starting to have those conversations with the board, who might be just a room full of dusty old suits? Because I mean, I appreciate now in fact, actually, you've given us some tips of going, well, actually, look, this is happening now, and we're not able to see people face to face. We're not able to invite them into our shop or into our office for those meetings. But what other ways have you found that people are able to or are there any resources that people could use to start to prove that point, or open up those conversations with their boards?
I mean, a lot of it, a lot of it right now comes out of obviously necessity. They're seeing a lot of walls being built up in things that they traditionally would have done. And so in some ways there's a sense of urgency in figuring out alternative routes to get to the end desired outcome of acquiring new customers or engaging your customers in a certain way, but you have to think about it differently. So I don't necessarily think there'll be a ton of resistance in trying to figure out new ways to get to the same desired outcome. I think that's probably the first thing is whatever elements of your strategy were being implemented in person or being implemented in ways that cannot today, starting with why were we as a business doing that and what was the outcome we were trying to achieve, and then using that as the baseline starting point for a conversation, and set it up with a scenario, or like, here's the state of the world, here's the problem we're running into, here's the vision that we see, and the vision is we're going to transform this traditional online or offline thing into an online experience, and here's the impact it's going to have on the business, and that impact on the business is that original goal. So I think that's the thing, is just like you're paving a new path, you're painting a vision on a new path to get to the same goal that you are struggling as a company to get to today. Because at the end of the day, all those old folks that make the decisions, the higher ups, like that's all they care about. They don't care how you get to it. They just care about getting to that desired outcome. So now, can you go, you're going to have this vision of like, we need this big website, we need to do all this stuff, and we need to have these interactions. Are you going to be able to do all of that out of the gate? Probably not. And that's okay, but fine.
Oh, really?
What's the highest impact thing that we can do in the next 3 months, and run it almost like a pilot? Like, let's break that down into the what are we going to do over the next 3 months that are going to show that we're building traction towards that end goal, and show that we're making progress on it, so that other people get bought in, so that they're willing to invest more, so that we can go faster. And so that's the other thing is, again, just like boil it down into bite-sized pieces. The other side of that, like if I step back from that topic, the other thing that would be interesting to consider is that one of the trends that we're seeing is that the lines of what a website is and what a piece of software is are blurring. It's very hard these days to determine what is a piece of software and what is a website. To the point where even the coding frameworks are all now in React or in some level of JavaScript between the two. And so it becomes very, very fuzzy. And that's because the technology that powers the website has gotten more and more and more advanced. And so to the point where like the lines are blurring so much that you can build these powerful interactive web app experiences on a CMS and do it as a mere mortal, someone who's maybe not a coder. And so to your point of like, how do we get people on board with this? It might be interesting to start by approaching the conversation around launching a software product and treating your website like a software product and thinking of it like a software product in your product line and approaching it that way. Again, tying it back to the goals of what that software product will impact the customers, how it'll provide more value or remove the barriers to value creation that came up because of the global pandemic, but also the impact that piece of software will have on a business. And then it's easier to say, well, we're going to build this piece of software as a part of our website, or we're going to think about our website as a piece of software and kind of build that out like that. So it might just be an interesting reframing, depending on the industry you're in and depending on who you're talking about, where it might spark some more interest thinking of it like a software product that you're adding to your product line versus coming at it initially from, hey, we want to redesign the website. Like right away, you're kind of putting yourself in a particular bucket in their mental model of how they think about their website.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you do that, so we think we need to redesign the website, and everybody goes back to, oh, well, that took us 6 months longer than we thought it was going to take. It was way more expensive. Actually, didn't we have to engage a whole new agency halfway through because the first one was a disaster? And then, insert name here, decided that because he knew how to pick up curtains and cushions, he wanted to be involved in all of the choices about the color of the calls to action. That was awful. But yeah, the thinking, I love the the thinking about it in that kind of slightly in a much more entrepreneurial way, I guess. And maybe that's why I'm drawn to it. But that, okay, well, we can, hey, and this clearly why your mind runs that way of let's think about what's the biggest impact we can do. And maybe you don't necessarily need to change the whole website. At that point, you can just go, right, let me do one journey for one buyer persona. And if you've talked to anybody at HubSpot or anybody at Noisy Little Monkey in the past, you'll understand buyer persona. And if you don't know what it is, I suspect now I'm going to say it a third time, buyer persona. You've kind of figured out who it is. But let's do one journey for that one person, get massive impact. And as you say, then go, okay, let's almost be agile about it. Do we improve this? Or do we now open up another journey through the website? And at some point, then it maybe becomes a website redesign. But you haven't had to have that difficult conversation with the board. You're just saying, well, I'm going to fix this because we can't do it anymore. There's a break. We can't have them in here to do this thing. So yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I suppose, and this is maybe what you've been working on a bit, and I'm not necessarily asking you to pitch at all because you're doing
good. I'm not a salesperson.
Not doing. But I guess some of the hardships that we find, and so Noisy Little Monkey works on WordPress websites. We are by no means an exclusively HubSpot agency, and we that's a deliberate choice. We want to make sure that we understand the whole market rather than just be kind of standard HubSpot acolytes. As much as we love HubSpot, I'm contractually obliged to say that, otherwise Brian Halligan will come around and kick my ass. That thing that we struggle with so often is, well, if I want to change that one journey or I want to change a few little things, I still have to get on the phone to my web developer. I still have to, because I'm not just changing some words on a page. Are there, and I guess actually in many ways you can do it with words on a page and changing a few calls to action a lot of the time. But where do you think most people traditionally would see friction?
Well, one of the interesting things and the reason that we launched CMS Hub in April was we saw a couple trends in the market, a couple shifts. There's 4 shifts. I'll go through them real quickly. The first 2, I'll go a little more in depth because they're kind of exactly what you're talking about. The first thing that we saw was that when we looked at the CMS market across the board and we pulled the common threads of pain that people experience, the first one that we saw was that traditional CMSs, that's kind of what we bucket these as, force you. So as the business grows, it demands more out of the website. You have to add in new experiences, you add in new pages, you add in new functionality. And with a traditional CMS, a lot of times that's layering on more and more and more things, adding new plugins, adding new themes, and you add until the thing becomes kind of unwieldy. And in order to manage that, you have to, for every plugin, I think average WordPress site's like 20 to 50 plugins, all built by different developers. So they have different coding standards. You have to get all those little different pieces of software to talk to each other. Sometimes they have conflicts and you got to resolve those. And then you end up having to manage the server that it lives on. So you got to pay and either pay someone like WP Engine to do some of that for you, or you got to manage it yourself if it goes down, the performance of it. Then you have the piece of software and all the plugins you got to update on a regular basis. And then you have to layer in on top of that the security element of it all, right? So making sure that things are safe, secure, reliable. And if things go out of date,
that all plugins aren't 100% safe. Good God, Luke.
No.
What sort of?
I think there's like 70,000 hacks a day that happen, and that's like one frustrating but it's also a business expense when the website goes down. It's like an opportunity cost of, okay, we're not in business right now. In this day and age, if your website's your primary revenue channel, like, okay, that's a problem. But also there's a privacy concern. I mean, there's some really scary stuff where people are injecting JavaScript that scrapes out personal data of your customers. And that's like a legal concern in terms of privacy. So, all in all, I think the point is that, and this isn't exclusive to WordPress. It's WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, crap, like any of these systems that you have to plug and layer a ton of stuff on, is that they force you to focus your limited time, energy, and resources on maintaining the system. And what that does is it pulls your time and energy away from your customers. You can't spend that time and energy on your customers if you're just trying to like keep the system running. So what we're seeing is that modern CMSs, this kind of goes back to, limited budgets, but part of it is just limited time. You got to invest your time effectively. Like where can I invest 1 hour to generate the most amount of leads or visitors or revenue for that 1 hour time investment? What we see with modern CMSs, and it's not just HubSpot, but they're all built on SaaS infrastructure. So just like every other piece of software in the world that's built on SaaS, for some reason in the web world, we're living in the old school days where you have to maintain a server, you have to do all the plugin updates yourself, you have to do all these things on your own to keep the system going. A SaaS infrastructure, it stands for software as a service. The service is the company just takes care of all that for you. They do all the security, they do all the, like everything's all taken care of for you so that it frees your time up to focus on your customers, to focus on value adding, to focus on generating more leads, and invest your time more wisely.
Yeah.
So that's like a really interesting one. Again, it's not exclusive to HubSpot. We are SaaS CMS, but it's also Shopify, it's Wix, it's Squarespace, all of these CMSs that are just up and coming and just starting to take over. And one of the reasons is because you can focus on the things that are going to help grow your business, not updating a plugin.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. I think the second thing to your original question that we see is like, as you layer on more and more things, the system becomes complex. It's very fragile. And so to do any changes to it, like you said, the system naturally creates gatekeepers where you have to go to someone else to be able to get any kind of work done.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a couple of problems there. One, you as a marketer, it's just really slow to get anything done on the site. You submit a request, the developer's doing something else in another sprint cycle. Maybe if you buy them some wine and sweet talk them, they'll prioritize it. And 6 weeks later, a small change will get done on the site. And so it slows things down. It's very hard to be agile, as we talked about. And especially in this day and age, we know that you have to be agile because every day is changing, right? You have to be able to get the work that you need done. And it's also not good for the developers because their time is not best spent changing a button color, adding an image into a page, moving a module around. Like that's all like very commodity, very boring work that I guarantee you developers do not want to be doing. They don't want to be like no developer wakes up in the morning and says, I am fulfilled today because I get to update plugins, and I'm fulfilled because I get to change a button color. Like that's just not what they want to be doing. They want to be working on more complex value-adding experiences, building the membership systems, building the customer support systems, building the experiences, the more complex things, calculators, payment processing systems, membership login systems, academies. Those are the things that they want to be building, but they're being pulled into these little things. And so again, those are all symptoms of the problem that traditional CMSs force gatekeepers. Modern CMSs just are built in a way that enable your team, the marketing team, to just get their work done. Whatever they need to do, optimize it, to build and optimize a page, add modules, change buttons, relay out a page, add content, create a new page, just let them get their work done so that the developer, what it does is it shifts the developer. So the developer now is not making that work. What they're doing is they're building the system out in a way to enable the marketing team. They're building the user interface layer that the marketing team interacts with. They determine what should be drag and droppable, what colors are available, what should be able to be changed by a marketer. And they set that system up to enable the marketing team to get their work done. So they're almost like software developers kind of at this point. They build that, again, lines are blurring. They build that UI on top of the CMS, and then they're building those more impactful things. They're building those payment processing systems, all those things that we talked about. So, again, I think going back to your question, when we have, in a day and age like this where we have limited resources and time is our most precious resource, it's very important that we prioritize and focus where we spend that time. And as someone who's lived this pain, I'm very passionate about saying that our time as humans are in terms of where we can invest in growing our business is not best spent in maintaining a system and in getting stuck in back and forth emails with a gatekeeper. It's being able to make progress and just focus on our customers. And so modern CMSs, HubSpot being one, but again, Wix, Squarespace, Shopify, they all kind of fit that bill. That's what you want to look for when you're evaluating CMSs. Can the CMS do those things for you?
Yeah. Yeah, that which really speaks actually to that money and uncertainty thing, is because the uncertainty of it, and this is around even when we're not in the midst of a global pandemic, the uncertainty is always, well, is what I'm doing going to work? Is it going to make the meaningful change to the business that I think it's going to do? Is it going to get me a promotion? Is it going to get me famous at a board level, or get me headhunted from somewhere else? I'm doing all of this stuff, and then, shit, it didn't work. My hypothesis has proved to be wrong. Okay, but with as you say, with Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, don't really like Wix, HubSpot, you can at least, particularly with the new systems, you can pivot a little bit and go, all right, well, I don't have to get on the phone to my web developer, who's normally a great person, but they are not fulfilled, as you say, by removing apostrophes and changing the colors of buttons.
Well, it shrinks the feedback cycle. So think about it this way: in a traditional CMS, where maybe it takes, let's say, 4 weeks to get an update to a page, even if you're lucky, 2 weeks to get an update to a page, then you find out 2 weeks later, after a bunch of back and forth emails, after working with your developer, let's say you spend 30 hours between your entire team on making that change, you find out it doesn't work, or
Yeah.
it doesn't in fact produce the results you're looking for. Now you're 2 weeks later and 30 hours in the hole to get to that same like learnings, versus a system where your marketing team can jump in a matter of a couple hours, just do the work that you need. Now you're finding out in days with a few hours. So the feedback cycle is a lot faster, and that's where you're going to win against your competitors, where your competitors are like trudging through the mud, trying to like figure this stuff out. You can move a lot faster, collect a lot more feedback. And again, like you said, all of that results to being smarter about where we spend our time in order to get the results we want and become, world-class champions in the company, of course.
Yeah. And yeah, marketers are man, God, we come across it all the time, every day, and I feel for them, because we're asking them to go and get something done often on their website that they can't achieve, and we know that's going to slow the project down, often by months, and not because people are awful, but just because that's the way it has to be, because there's toing and froing all the time. So that's really cool to think about it like that. I know. And actually, we're running short on time, so we wanted to. I know you wanted to ask a question of the people who are on the call about using their website in a slightly different way. Do you want to pose that and then give us an action to go away with? If you can remember it.
I can't remember it, to tell you the truth. We chatted a couple weeks ago, and so the world's a blur.
And actually, I think we've covered it already, which is why I was quite thrilled. And we didn't mean to. I've just looked it up. I'm over here looking it up on my PC. You were saying, how might you leverage your website as a tool to reduce friction in other parts of the business? And actually, You've already said a few ways. Well, what are some of those meetings that you used to have to maybe onboard a client, or a quarterly catch up with a client? Can you do that now using your website a bit more effectively? And certainly perhaps using marketing and sales and service automation. And certainly we're seeing that all the time. It's that thing of being your own best customer. If you're a HubSpot partner, man, just the automation, even in a business of what is now 10 people, it's just so much slicker to use some of that automation and stop copying and pasting stuff between 15 different systems.
Gives you a lot more leverage when you have 10 people with automation behind it versus 10 people having to duct tape and glue and do the stuff manually. Like, you get way more leverage with the work that you can do, the good work you can do when you have some power behind you. Yeah, it's a good question that all of you can leave with and think about with your team, is like, how might we leverage the website more effectively in other parts of the journey? As we mentioned earlier, as John mentioned, one of the best places to look for revenue is your existing customers. They already have a relationship. They're already built in. My guess is, if you're like most marketers, if you were like me a few years ago, you probably have some blinders on where you're thinking about your website as only a tool to generate net new business, net new visitors, net new leads. So let's take those blinders off. Let's look at other parts of the flywheel where we have customers in the door and we were trying to delight customers. Could we build things like brand new customer onboarding so that they activate a lot faster and see the value a lot faster and retain better? Could we find ways to build client dashboards where they can be more successful? They can see your other products and services that complement what they're doing and try to create cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So there's lots of examples of that. We're just talking about that particular part of the journey, but there's likely, if you have limited time and resources, your goal is at the end of the day to generate leads that lead to revenue. Of course, you can bring net new people in, but my guess is that many of us, like myself, we forget that the website can be used with your existing customers, your existing dealer network, your existing people that are already buying for you, and finding ways that you can use the website as a tool to engage those people and generate leads and revenue from them.
Yeah. Jonathan's asking how you measure NPS and whether you have any tips. I think we're probably going to get out of time, but what I think we can do is, do you have any quick tips on the best way to measure NPS other than obviously send out all of the stuff via HubSpot? Stop using MailChimp. No. Any quick tips on that before we wrap up?
I mean, the first thing is just to double check that NPS is the right metric that you want to be measuring. There's a lot of ways you can measure customer value and customer success, and NPS is one way. You want to incorporate other ones because NPS is just one indicator. But so that's the first thing, is like, is NPS the right thing to be measuring for what we're trying to understand about our customers? The second thing is, what other things can we do in addition to NPS to make sure that we have multiple points all pointing in the same direction? So that's number two. Number three is, if you do NPS, it's important to understand that NPS, typically the way it's answered, is like a step back score of the entire experience, not just your product, but your product, your team, how you engage them, like everything that the person interacted with. It's a very global view of how the company and everything within the company is impacting the life of your person. So that's important to understand. If you're trying to get product feedback, you might use something like a SUS score or use some other way to measure usability and interaction. So that's like the third thought. And then there's a lot of great tools out there. HubSpot has our own feedback tool that you can use for NPS, and then tied into all the automation. You could use one that I've used in the past where HubSpot's not an option is Hotjar, HOTJAR.com. They're able to ask some of those feedback questions, and then being really good about, I think one thing that gets forgotten about, it's really important. Our team, we have a voice of the customer team, and this is like all the stuff they do. They empower people like me with this feedback and all that, and they drill it into our heads that it's not just about collecting the feedback, but it's about closing the loop on the feedback so that the person knows they were heard, and so that they see the company taking some kind of action, whether that's like, hey, they requested this feature and we're going to respond that we don't have that today, but we're now going to put them on a list so that in 6 months or a year from now, when we have a beta or when we have something, we know the group of people that are already interested in this. So again, not thinking of it as like just a one-way communication of collecting feedback, but finding ways that you can create a loop, an ongoing conversation with those people, really goes far in just making sure that they feel heard, and that that they actually, like, you care about their feedback, and therefore they'll give you more, and it'll be more successful. So that's like maybe another little pro tip, is find ways to close the loop.
Fabulous. I said I was going to get back to you on that in the chat, Jonathan, and I don't need to now. Luke did. Hopefully on your screen you're seeing Luke's contact details, not all of them. I don't think we should give you his mobile number, but I'm sure you'll answer any questions I put you by the group over on LinkedIn.
We got your notes, John, right now. We're checking out your notes.
Oh, you're seeing my notes. I'm not writing a blog post much. Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. Man, imagine if I'd written, God, this guy's boring.
Hey, everyone's got their own opinion. There's a lot of people in this world that find me boring or annoying, so you wouldn't be the first, that's for sure.
You and me both, friend. You and me both. Brilliant. Well, guys, we're running over a little bit, primarily because me and Luke shot the shit so much. I apologize for that. But Luke, thank you so much for that. That was really, really useful. We'll send the recording to everybody, but thanks very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always love chatting with folks, especially across the globe. It's always really fun to chat with folks that are like just doing really interesting things, and especially agencies. Again, my heart's with agencies. It's where I came from. And I love seeing all the cool stuff that y'all are doing with HubSpot. So I appreciate you being part of the journey with us.